Welcome to Through a Glass Darkly Radio. You're listening to us on United Public Radio, and the intro song was Mark of the Doomslayer by Carl Casey at White Bat Audio. Welcome back, everyone. Hope you've had a fantastic week, and somebody's first live episode. So let me just go through some of these. Good evening, Ginger Norseman. Conniving Bones, your first live episode. Congratulations. Welcome. And Gray One New, welcome. All right. It's been a weird week. I had to do a lot of traveling last week, so I'm pretty tired. Thank you, Conniving Bones. I appreciate that. For folks on the radio, Conniving Bones says, new subscriber, love your show. I appreciate you. Actually, there's probably a lot of new people here because at least over the last few weeks, things started taking off. So this month, in terms of views, I'm tracking at pretty much double what I normally track. Same thing with subscriber growth and stuff like that. I don't quite know what's driving it. I mean, I know which episodes are kind of driving it. A lot of it is all the doom and gloom from Stefan Schwartz and Lynn Buchanan. There was also, there's, Kurt Metzger also mentioned the show on his podcast. I don't know if you all know who Kurt Metzger is, but he's basically good friends with Joe Rogan. He's been on Rogan's show for, I don't know, he's been 6 to 8 episodes. You can look it up. So apparently he watches this, or at least he's watched episodes of this show. I don't know how often he watches it, but a little crazy. So I'm finally getting a little bit of growth. Yeah. Thank you, Gray One New, who's also new. So it looks like YouTube's finally starting to recommend my channel to people because it wasn't in the past. So I'll take it. Anyway, all right, I should get started because people are here for Michael Aquino. I didn't do this well enough last week, so I want to be very clear. For the radio show and for the radio show only, I come up with ideas, and then I use AI to generate scripts. I quickly review them. If they're no good, then I'll have them regenerate it and stuff like that. But it's an AI-generated script. I'm very clear about this. If people don't like it, totally understand. And with that in mind, right, a lot of I generate it to have sources, but sometimes it can hallucinate. So check all the facts. There's a chance that AI got it wrong, but I want to be clear. And the reason I use it is I work 100 hours a week on a number of different things. You all knew I do the future forecasting group. I have a full-time day job. I also do interviews for my publisher. I write. I do, I run this channel. So I'm constantly working, never taking any breaks. So I understand if people don't like it. That's fair. But this is kind of the only place where I do that. So again, I want to be very, very clear. Yeah. You guys are like pretty cognitive. I just had an email exchange with him today. So, and we scheduled time in 2 weeks. So Jason Giorgiani will be on here. I was waiting for a little bit because channels like me can't get away with having folks like Giorgiani on until people like Jesse Michaels provide them with a platform, and then that gives me permission. If it were the other way around, I'm rolling the dice. So I've wanted to have him on for a while. He's on my radar for a while, but it's just a very strategic pause for me. It's kind of like an Alex Jones thing. I would love to have Alex Jones on this because it would just be crazy and hilarious. And I don't agree with him and everything, but I just think he's been right more often than he's not, even though he says crazy stuff. but like that's still a little too risky, right? Maybe, and not that he would come on this show anyway, but like there's certain people that you have to be very cautious because you don't want to get the channel torpedoed, right? Just because you talk to somebody. But anyway, yeah, the Justin Bush, the first video of his did extremely well. Yeah, AI could be controlled by the Logan. Thank you, Logan Clark. Yeah, it's probably still too hot for this channel, right? Conniving Bones, right? Alex Jones is wild, but still too hot. Yeah, but there's a higher bar for people like me. Again, Jesse Michaels can get away with it, but he's ideologically neutral enough to get away with it. I am not. So, we will see. Yeah. Definitely never going to say never, but we're turning the frogs gay. Yeah, that's basically. It would be entertaining. I guarantee it. Anyway, all right, let's get to it because people are like, I just came here for the Michael Aquino thing. Why is he still talking? So, without further ado, let's get started. Okay. Lieutenant Colonel Michael Aquino, an analytical profile. First, we're going to start with his military career and PSYOP service. And there's some interesting things when I kind of went through this, some interesting connections that now that I kind of have somewhat better sense of how the world works, makes a lot more sense here. Anyway, I'll call it out when we talk about it. So Michael A. Aquino, 1946 to 2019, was a career U.S. Army officer who rose to the rank of lieutenant colonel and specialized in psychological operations, or PSYOP. He was commissioned as a second lieutenant after earning a Bachelor of Arts in Political Science from UC Santa Barbara in 1968. Aquino's early assignments included training at Fort Bragg's JFK Special Warfare Center, which, for folks who are not in the know, that is generally where the Army Special Forces are located. And then airborne qualification with the 82nd Airborne in 1969 to 1970. During the Vietnam War, then Lieutenant Aquino served with the 6th PSYOP Battalion in Vietnam. As a PSYOP officer attached to the Big Red 1, which is the 1st Infantry Division, Aquino conducted psychological warfare missions. Notably, he participated in experimental operations using amplified sound and quote-unquote demonic screams from helicopters to intimidate enemy Viet Cong and North Vietnamese troops. These efforts exemplified the unconventional tactics of PSYOP, employing fear and disorientation as weapons. Aquino later recalled writing personal manuscripts during lulls in combat, describing how he drafted a satanic-themed essay, the Diabolicon, in the early 1970s, while directing PSYOP teams in Lai Cai, Vietnam, or Lai Cai. After Vietnam, Aquino continued to advance through the ranks. He earned multiple advanced qualifications, including Special Forces and Military Intelligence, and was assigned to PSYOP units in the Army Reserve. By 1980, as a major stationed at the 7th PSYOP Group in San Francisco, Aquino co-authored a seminal internal paper, From PSYOP to Mind War, the Psychology of Victory, alongside then Colonel Paul E. Vallely. Yes, that Colonel Paul Vallely, the guy who, then Colonel. I think he's retired as a general, but the guy who was on Fox News constantly in over the past few decades. That Paul Vallely. Kind of interesting that they're talking about PSYOPs. This paper advocated applying psychological techniques in future warfare to affect an enemy's will to fight, anticipating information warfare strategies. Aquino's blend of academic insight and field experience informed the mind war concept, highlighting his intellectual approach to military psychological operations. Aquino's Army career spanned from 1968 to 1994, combining active duty and reserve service. He held assignments as a foreign area officer and defense attaché in Europe, leveraging his political science expertise, and taught strategy and political science as an adjunct professor at Golden Gate University from 1980 to 1986. His military decorations included the Bronze Star Medal and the Air Medal for Vietnam service, and upon retiring honorably in 1994, he received the Meritorious Service Medal. Contemporaries described his service record as exemplary despite the controversies that later surrounded him. Aquino ultimately retired at the rank of lieutenant colonel after 26 years in uniform. And then let's just talk a little bit about his academic and intellectual contributions. Parallel to his military career, Aquino pursued rigorous academic work and contributed to intellectual discourse in both strategic studies and esoteric subjects. He earned a PhD in political science from the University of California, Santa Barbara in 1980 with a specialization in international relations. His doctoral dissertation, The Neutron Bomb, analyzed the geopolitical and strategic implications of the enhanced radiation nuclear weapon. Aquino later published this work, updating it into an ebook edition, and noted that it was, quote, originally my dissertation for the Doctor of Philosophy degree, end quote, conferred in 1980. This research reflects Aquino's engagement with Cold War defense policy and his ability to translate complex military topics into scholarly analysis. Beyond formal academia, Aquino was an active writer and theorist. In the strategic realm, the Mind War paper in 1980 demonstrated his forward-thinking approach to psychological warfare. Decades later, he expanded upon these ideas and published works addressing information operations and national strategy, bridging his military insight with evolving technology and media environments. Some of these works were self-published after his retirement. Aquino's academic career also led him to teach university courses. From 1980 to 1986, he served as an adjunct professor of political science at Golden Gate University in San Francisco, offering courses on topics such as political theory, comparative government, and international politics. By all accounts, Aquino was respected in his classroom for his erudition, and he continued to lecture and publish essays combining political, historical, and philosophical analysis. Notably, Aquino also produced substantial writings on occult philosophy and Satanism, which we'll discuss later on. In 1989, he privately published a 2-volume tome titled The Church of Satan, which documented the history and practices of that institution from his perspective. Later, he compiled The Temple of Set, a massive work in multiple omnibus editions, as a comprehensive guide to the religion he founded. These works, though outside mainstream academia, exhibit Aquino's systematic approach. They cite historical, religious, and philosophical sources at length. In combining scholarly style with esoteric subject matter, Aquino aimed to elevate occult discourse to an intellectually respectable level. For example, historian of religion Matthias Gardel observed that Aquino is an idealist basing his theology on Plato and the Gnostic Hermetic tradition, in contrast to the materialist approach of some other Satanists. This underscores Aquino's role as a theoretician. His writings frequently reference Platonic philosophy, ancient Egyptian texts, and Aleister Crowley's works, synthesizing them into a unique intellectual framework for Satanism and the left-hand path. In summary, Aquino's intellectual contributions straddled two worlds: traditional military scholarship and the unconventional realm of occult philosophy. In both, he strove for rigor. His ability to earn advanced degrees and produce formal research while simultaneously authoring religious manifestos and philosophical treatises exemplified the breadth of his pursuits. This interdisciplinary erudition made Aquino a distinctive figure, as he utilized his academic skills to lend credibility and structure to the emergent new religious movement he led. All right, so then let's talk a little bit about his religious leadership, from the Church of Satan to the Temple of Set. Aquino's notoriety largely stems from his role as a satanic religious leader. His spiritual journey began in the late 1960s with Anton LaVey's Church of Satan and culminated in 1975 when Aquino founded his own esoteric order, the Temple of Set. Involvement in the Church of Satan, while stationed in California in 1969, the young Army officer, described as a sincere spiritual seeker, attended ceremonies at LaVey's famous Black House in San Francisco. Aquino formally joined the Church of Satan that year, finding resonance in LaVey's iconoclastic Nietzschean philosophy during an era of personal existential crisis. By 1971, upon returning from Vietnam, Aquino was ordained as a satanic priest in the Church of Satan. He proved an able organizer and writer for the church, contributing essays to its newsletter and forming a local satanic grotto or chapter that met in his home. LaVey valued Aquino's intellect and discipline, precisely the kind of member who could lend legitimacy to Satanism. Letters from LaVey in the early 1970s praised Aquino, noting that while membership was growing, brain surgeons and congressmen are still in short supply among Satanists. Aquino's status rose to effectively LaVey's right-hand man by the mid-1970s. Despite this close association, Aquino grew disillusioned with the Church of Satan's direction. LaVey's approach to Satanism was avowedly atheistic and increasingly cynical. He portrayed rituals as psychodrama and even began to sell priesthood titles for donations when church finances dwindled. To Aquino, who regarded the priesthood as a genuine spiritual vocation, these developments were dishonorable and corrupt. He and his wife, Lilith Sinclair, herself a Church of Satan member, resigned from the Church of Satan on June 10, 1975, in protest of LaVey's leadership changes. Upon departing, Aquino declared that the church had lost its infernal mandate. In his view, LaVey had betrayed Satan's will. This dramatic schism set the stage for Aquino to establish a new organization with a more theistic and esoteric interpretation of Satanism. So this gets along to the founding of the Temple of Set. After leaving COS, Aquino sought spiritual guidance through a personal ritual on the summer solstice of 1975. In his account, he performed a midnight invocation to Satan and experienced a revelatory communication. He claimed that the entity he knew as Satan appeared to him not as a symbol, but as an actual metaphysical being, and revealed he no longer wished to be known by the adulterated Hebrew name, Satan, but by his proper name, Set. In ancient Egyptian mythology, Set, or Seth, is the god of darkness, storms, and the desert, a figure Aquino now believed to be the true identity behind the Satan archetype. Aquino transcribed this communication as the Book of Coming Forth by Night, a short manifesto that became the foundational scripture of his new religion. The text proclaimed a new aeon of Set and named Aquino as its magus and high priest, effectively anointing him to found a temple of Set to carry on the Prince of Darkness's work. In this scripture, Set frames the Church of Satan as a useful precursor that had cast an image of Satan for humanity, but now instructs Aquino to establish a more illuminated path, the Temple of Set, free of LaVeyan materialism. Aquino formally announced the Temple of Set in 1975 as a new satanic order, or more precisely, a Setian order, incorporating several other defectors from the Church of Satan. That year, the Temple of Set was chartered as a nonprofit church in California and soon obtained federal tax-exempt status as a religious organization. Aquino served as the temple's founding high priest and primary doctrinal authority for his first 2 decades. He was succeeded by Don Webb in the late 1990s when Aquino semi-retired from active leadership. In terms of doctrine and practices of the Temple of Set, under Aquino's guidance, the Temple of Set developed an intricate occult philosophy that it distinguished from LaVeyan Satanism in several key ways. First, the Temple of Set is theistic, or at least metaphysical. It affirms the existence of Set as a real entity or principle, often described as the embodiment of conscious, isolate intelligence in the universe. Members, called Setians, revere Set as the oldest manifestation of the Prince of Darkness, tracing his veneration back to pre-dynastic Egypt, or circa 3200 BC. While the temple does not worship Set in a submissive manner, it views him as an initiatory teacher figure who bestowed upon humanity the black flame of divine consciousness, essentially the gift of individual self-aware intellect. This belief stands in contrast to LaVey's strictly atheistic stance. As one scholar summarized, current leaders of the Church of Satan emphasize Satan as symbol only. Aquino emphasized Satan Set as extra-physical. The Temple of Set's doctrine is explicitly a form of the left-hand path, which Aquino defined as the pursuit of self-deification and personal godhood through conscious will. In temple literature, all conventional religions are viewed as right-hand path, systems that demand surrender to an external deity or dissolution of the self. In contrast, the left-hand path is championed as the religion of the self, in which the individual, through magic and self-development, aspires to become an immortal godlike being. The temple's Setian philosophy teaches antinomianism, a deliberate rejection of herd mentality and societal norms in favor of forging one's own values and identity. Setians see themselves as elite in the classical sense, engaged in a difficult path of intellectual and spiritual excellence, often misunderstood or feared by the masses. The temple explicitly honors and enshrines consciousness, holding individual self-awareness as sacred. Practice in the Temple of Set revolves around black magic, defined not as malicious witchcraft, but as the process of my will be done. The use of will and ritual to actualize one's own purposes, as opposed to the right-hand path motto, thy will be done. Submission to divine will. Setians engage in magical workings to enhance their zephyr, an Egyptian term pronounced kepher, adopted by Aquino, meaning to become or self-evolution. Kepher, introduced as the word of the Eon of Set in 1975, encapsulates the temple's principal goal of continual self-improvement and spiritual transformation. Rituals are often individualized rather than scripted. Members are encouraged to speak to Set as a friend, gently and without fear, rather than perform formulaic recitations of worship on bended knee. This informal, introspective approach reflects Aquino's stance that each initiate must forge their own relationship with Set and their own magical insight, rather than rely on dogma. Dude, I can't believe this synchronicity keeps going. You'll understand when I keep going. So the organizational structure of the Temple of Set is hierarchical, yet intended to be meritocratic. It is governed by a council of how many, folks? How many? You know the answer. I'm just going to give folks actually a moment to comment. How many are on this council? I'm just going to go through some of this. What's the live chat? Logan? I don't know. Actually, I don't know what it's like on X. Let's see. Yep, the Franklin scandal. Yep, we'll get into that. So Gustavo Cordoba saying he, being Aquino, was directly involved in Monarch, MK Ultra, and others abusing. All right, I'm not going to say those words. He was accused of kind of some of that stuff, but yep. Again, I got to be careful what I say on YouTube. So okay. Colonel. So again, Gustavo Cordoba said Colonel Aquino was mentioned directly by name by Project Monarch survivor Paul Bonacci. NECA says Aquino is very misunderstood. His books on philosophical conception of reality and nature have very real value to people who do want to understand what occultism is. Yep, conniving bones, catastrophic. I mean, this is part of it. We're engaged in it right now. All the stuff I'm talking about. These things, like may be able to go to space or whatever the phenomena, but it's been right here with us since the beginning and probably before. Yep, spiritual ascension. You're right. Not many righteous beings are ballsy enough to dive headfirst into dark occultism to get a final grasp of what they're up against. Keep in mind, I bring the U.S. military's philosophy into this. In order to understand the enemy, you have to, read their work and understand them. Again, I spent all my time in the military fighting like the Russians. Well, was he though? I don't know. Let's see. Okay, so NECA writes, I don't believe the scandal accusations. His quotes about the Neteru and spirituality and antiquity are worth looking at. People are in a mind prison with religious thinking study occultism. Yeah, I don't know what to. I know he's accused of horrible things, but I also know he was studying this stuff during the Satanic Panic, right? So he would be a convenient target. That doesn't mean he didn't do that stuff. I don't know what happened. Okay. Yep, you got it, Scott. Nine. The Council of Nine is back. So, yep, it's definitely nine. If people are familiar with my recent synchronicity. Rick, good guess with 33, though. Yep. Sorry, I'm just trying to get through this really quick. I'm going to go and continue. Okay. Yeah, she did, I think. Yeah, she was definitely on Oprah. Tim Beck says Oprah had him on her show ages ago. Was it controversial, right? It's just controversy. Oh, just I don't want to recount it for people who are here, but just go to my community tab and it's like one post to go. I have a recent post about a precognitive dream that happened, but there's a post before that recounts this, the owl that kind of showed up on my neighbor's roof on September 9th, 2025. You had the digits of 2025. It's nine, so 999. There's a long history with me and the Archangel Gabriel. The Archangel Gabriel's number is 9. The Archangel Gabriel's direction is west. The owl was facing only to the west. There's just all sorts of crazy. And then there was another dream that I had, maybe a year, 18 months ago or something. Anyway, it's just there's a whole history behind it. I don't want to recount it, but there's lots of nines synchronicity. Okay, all right. Let me get back to it. Apologies for the brief delay. All right, so okay. So, to repeat, the organizational structure of the temple is set as hierarchical, yet intended to be meritocratic. It is governed by a council of 9, an executive body somewhat analogous to a board of elders, which appoints the high priest or priestess of Set. Initiates advance through recognized degrees of initiation. Number 1, 1 degree, Setian through 6th degree, Ipsissimus, Ipsissima. These degrees are not purchased or granted by tenure, but are earned via demonstrable attainment in mastery of the black arts and personal growth. A new member enters a Setian first degree and is expected to reach adept second degree within a 2-year period an understanding of temple philosophy and magical competence. Higher degree, priesthood, third degree and above, signify not only attainment but an office. For example, priesthood third degree members serve as clergies and have authority to mentor and, if necessary, expel members to uphold the temple's standards. The temple also contains specialized orders and local groups called pylons. Orders led by fourth degree magisters focus on particular areas of the magical arts and sciences, allowing adept level members to pursue shared esoteric interests, for example, ancient Egyptian magic, Hermetic Kabbalah, or other thematic disciplines. Pylons are small voluntary assemblages of Setians in a region who meet to exchange ideas and work rituals. Importantly, they are not congregations of followers, but cooperative forums for peers. Internal culture in the Temple of Set emphasizes responsibility, maturity, and ethics. Aquino was keenly aware that occult groups can attract unstable individuals or be distorted by egotism. Therefore, temple texts explicitly forbid criminal or sadistic activity and stress that black magic must be used with wisdom and restraint. The temple sees itself as an heir to many previous esoteric traditions, from Pythagorean and Hermetic orders to modern occult societies, but insists on extracting the positive insights of those predecessors while discarding their failures or moral flaws. Members are expected to maintain mundane integrity. Many are professionals in various fields, and to treat their esoteric exploration seriously, not as license for delusion or abuse. The ethos of elitist professionalism was instilled by Aquino and remains a point of pride for the temple. It distinguishes rational, philosophically grounded Satanism from the sensationalized or deviant image often painted by outsiders. In summary, Aquino's Temple of Set represented a more intellectually refined, metaphysically committed form of Satanism. Aquino diverged from LaVey by reintroducing devotional elements, the literal set, and a systematic magical praxis aimed at self-deification. By designing a structured initiatory order with degree progressions of priesthood and foundational texts, he gave the Temple of Set the cohesive identity of a new religious movement rather than a mere schismatic cult. The temple's doctrine, while complex, can be viewed as Aquino's attempt to modernize ancient Setian worship for contemporary minds, blending ancient Egyptian symbolism, Western occult philosophy, and a pragmatic focus on self-directed psychological growth. This made Aquino one of the prominent figures in late 20th century Satanism, credited among the primary theoreticians of any modern religious movement in the eyes of some scholars. All right, here we go. Public controversies and media scrutiny. I hope to God I don't get thrown off of you or get, I'm going to have to say some of this in like coded terms because I want to be very careful with YouTube. Aquino's dual identity as army officer and satanic priest thrust him into several public controversies, especially at the height of the 1980s satanic panic. The most significant was the Presidio abuse allegations, of what, which led to intense media and law enforcement scrutiny of Aquino and his wife. In 1986, amid a national hysteria over alleged ritual abuse in daycare centers, a young girl at the Presidio Army-based child care center in San Francisco accused Mikey and Shambi, names she used for Michael and Lilith Aquino, of abuse, let's just say. The Aquinos were well known on base. Michael was then stationed at Presidio as a reservist active guard officer, and both were flamboyantly Gothic in dress, which likely made them conspicuous targets once rumors of satanic cults began circulating. In November 1986, the San Francisco Police, Army Criminal Investigation Command, and FBI opened a joint investigation, already on alert after another daycare worker had been charged with abuse. The fact that Aquino was an avowed Satanist and leader of the Temple of Set made the allegations explosive. The media portrayed him as a self-proclaimed high priest of Satan accused of ritual abuse on a military base. Insert, well, you all know what I'm talking about. Investigators searched the Aquino's home and confiscated numerous items, weapons, occult books, video equipment, but found no physical evidence linking them to the abuse. The Aquinos cooperated, provided alibis that they had been in Washington, D.C. during the period of the alleged incident. Over the next 2 years, the case against the Aquinos crumbled. The SFPD, after extensive interviews and failing to corroborate the fantastical claims, which included tales of satanic ceremonies, discontinued their investigation in 1988, stating that the evidence was insufficient to prosecute. Army CID, however, kept the case open longer, and in August 1989, it issued a report titling both Aquinos as subjects of investigation, although it too brought no charges before the statute of limitations expired. Ultimately, no charges were ever filed against Michael or Lilith Aquino by any authority. The Aquinos were formally cleared, and a later review acknowledged they had solid alibis, and other suspects, like the other person charged, who was separately indicted, were likely responsible for any abuse that occurred. Even so, the mere accusation, a satanic priest accused of abuse, it's the M word, but I'm not going to use that word, made Aquino a focal point of public fear. Aquino responded vigorously to defend his name. In 1988, at the peak of the frenzy, he appeared on national television in full uniform on the Oprah Winfrey Show to rebut the charges and to explain the tenets of Satanism. This unusual spectacle, an Army officer calmly discussing devil worship on daytime TV, both shocked and fascinated the public. Aquino asserted his religious rights and pointed out that the allegations were unproven and illogical. He emphasized that true Satanists shun criminal acts and that the panic was built on hysteria. He likewise was featured in the infamous Geraldo Rivera television special Devil Worship Exposing Satan's Underground in 1988, where he debated law enforcement, occult experts, and denied any cult conspiracy. These appearances made Aquino one of the de facto public faces of accused Satanists during the late 80s, a role he undertook to challenge what he called a modern witch hunt. In the legal arena, Aquino sought redress for the Presidio accusations. He filed a lawsuit in 1991 against the Secretary of the Army, arguing under the Privacy Act that the Army's CID report wrongly kept his name in an investigative file even after he had been cleared. Aquino contended that the Army had effectively ruined his career by not exonerating him in records. He believed the accusation contributed to his early retirement in 1994. However, the courts ultimately denied his petition, citing that investigative files were exempt from amendment and that the Army had probable cause at the time to include his name. Separately, the Aquinos sued private individuals who they felt had libeled them. In 1994, they filed a suit against author Linda Blood for her book, The New Satanists, which insinuated they were part of a child abuse conspiracy. That suit was settled out of court, with the Aquinos reporting they were satisfied with the outcome. They also took on academic accusers. For instance, they successfully pressured scholar Carl Raschke to clarify or remove false implications about them in his book, Painted Black. Another notable conspiracy arose in 1997 when Aquino and his wife sued an internet service provider, Electricity, in an attempt to unmask and stop an anonymous user, Curio, who was spreading the old Presidio allegations on Usenet forums. The Aquinos claimed the ISP had a duty to remove defamatory content, while the ISP invoked free speech protections, noting that under the new Communications Decency Act, it wasn't liable for user posts. This case, Aquino versus Electricity, became an early test of internet speech and intermediary liability. Media coverage in Wired magazine highlighted the irony. Quote, a former U.S. Army lieutenant colonel who says he's something out of Revelation wants to stop an anonymous correspondent from dredging up a 1980s child, or just this abuse case. I didn't quote that properly, obviously, but again, be very careful on YouTube. The lawsuit was seen as an attempt to silence an online critic, critic. Ultimately, the ISP prevailed in having it dismissed on grounds that the Aquino suit was barred by free speech protections for ISPs. Although a setback for Aquino, this episode demonstrated his willingness to use the courts to combat what he regarded as baseless slander stemming from satanic panic era myths. Throughout the late 1980s and 1990s, Aquino thus occupied an unusual position in the public eye. He was at once villainized by segments of the media and anti-Satanist activists, and vindicated by investigations and some journalists who debunked the panic. Notably, by the 1990s, the narrative had shifted. Mainstream reporting began acknowledging that the wave of ritual abuse charges were unfounded. Investigations like the McMartin preschool trial collapsed with no evidence, and experts labeled the phenomenon as a moral panic. In this context, Aquino and his wife came to be seen by many as wrongful victims of hysteria. As one retrospective put it, they endured a years-long period of agony, legal wrangling, and exoneration, during which it was shown they could not have committed the alleged crimes. The case has since been cited as emblematic of the excesses of the satanic panic. Indeed, in late interviews and writings, Aquino often framed the 1980s allegations as modern witch hunts, drawing parallels to historical inquisitions. His eventual exoneration did not stop conspiracy theorists from targeting him even decades later. However, Aquino's steadfast public denials, coupled with legal victories against some accusers, helped clear his name in the eyes of objective observers. By the time of his death in 2019, the Presidio affair was widely regarded as a debunked episode, a cautionary tale of how fear and rumor can ruin innocent lives. In addition to the Presidio matter, Aquino navigated other media spotlights. His prominent role in Satanism meant he was frequently profiled in news articles about occult or devil worship trends. Some pieces were neutral or even intrigued by his erudition. For example, Washington Post and local papers interviewed him about Satanism's philosophy. Others were lurid. Tabloid stories emphasized his sinister appearance, the sharply arched eyebrows, widow's peak, and insidious grin that lent themselves to caricature. Aquino sometimes played into this image, donning a Dracula-like aesthetic, yet he also wrote letters to editors to correct misinformation about his temple's practices. Within occult circles, he was a controversial figure too, praised by some Satanists for his intellect, reviled by others for what they saw as egotism or overly ceremonial approach. A recurring theme was Aquino's ongoing feud with LaVey's Church of Satan, even years after the schism. Both sides engaged in polemics. Aquino publicly released court documents embarrassing LaVey, while LaVey mocked Aquino's temple as Laurel and Hardy's Sons of the Desert, implying it was a pompous parody. Such internecine spats occasionally spilled into the press or zines, contributing further to Aquino's notoriety in the satanic subculture. Through all controversies, Aquino maintained an analytical tone in defending himself. He emphasized evidence and challenged accusers to substantiate claims, often pointing out logical fallacies and rumors. For instance, noting that the supposed satanic ceremonies at Presidio would have required conspicuous activity that went unnoticed on a secure base. His military bearing in public interviews gave him a calm credibility, even as he spoke of occult topics. In the court of public opinion, however, Aquino's open identification as a Satanist guaranteed lasting suspicion. He acknowledged this reality, writing that the figure of Satan is such a powerful cultural scapegoat that anti-Satanism, much more than actual Satanism, fuels these narratives. Indeed, Aquino and his wife stood virtually alone in the late 1980s as open Satanists rebutting a tidal wave of fantastical allegations, and they suffered social and professional consequences as a result. Aquino's army career stagnated under the cloud of investigation, and he was passed over for promotion to full-bird colonel and retired as soon as eligible. He and Lilith also bore the personal cost of ostracism and threats. They had their home vandalized and received death threats from extremists who believed the satanic abuse rumors. Despite these pressures, Aquino remained unapologetic about his beliefs and emerged as an unlikely champion for religious liberty and reason. In later years, even critics acknowledged that the Aquinos had been victims of the anti-Satanist narratives marked almost entirely by fantasy, as occult scholar Mitch Horowitz wrote. By steadfastly confronting the controversy, Aquino inadvertently helped expose the lack of evidence behind the Satanic Panic, contributing to its fizzle in the 1990s. All right, then there's his occult beliefs and practices. At the heart of Aquino's life was his esoteric belief system, an idiosyncratic form of occultism combining satanic, Setian, and philosophical elements. His occult beliefs and practices can be understood through his writings and public statements, which articulate a sophisticated personal cosmology. Aquino was fundamentally a left-hand path occultist. He believed in the pursuit of self-conscious godhood and rejected notions of moral absolutes imposed by outsider deities. Philosophically, he drew inspiration from a wide range of sources. He frequently cited Platonism, i.e., the concept of an ideal form of self, Gnosticism, which is the idea of a hidden truth accessible only to the elect, and Hermeticism, the unity of microcosm and macrocosm, and the practice of magic is described in texts like the Emerald Tablet. Aquino saw the Prince of Darkness, whether called Satan or Set, as a real intelligible force that had interacted with select humans throughout history to ignite this hidden knowledge. He pointed out that many ancient traditions, especially those that honored consciousness, anticipated aspects of Satanism and Setianism. For example, ancient Egyptian religion's reverence for Set or certain Greco-Roman mystery cults were viewed as proto-Setian in Aquino's narrative. Aquino even subdivided history into blooms of Setian thought, claiming there were earlier eons where Set's influence surfaced in pre-diagnostic Egypt, in late antiquities Hermeticism, etc., which then went dormant under periods of monotheistic repression. The founding of the Temple of Set in 1975 was cast as the explicit fourth bloom of this perennial tradition. Aquino's core theological stance was cosmic dualism, but not in the conventional good versus evil sense. Instead, he posited an eternal tension between self-consciousness, represented by Set, and mindless entropy, represented by the natural order or the demiurge of Gnostic lore. To him, what religions called God was merely the ordering principle of the universe, while Set was the principle of isolate, individual intellect that stands apart from and questions the natural order. This philosophic position led Aquino to reinterpret many religions or religious and mythological motifs. For instance, he saw the biblical story of Lucifer's rebellion as a positive allegory of the individual intellectual rising up against blind authority. John Milton's Paradise Lost was one of his favorite works. He called it one of the most exalted statements of Satanism ever written, admiring Milton's portrayal of Satan as an unconquered spirit challenging cosmic tyranny. In Aquino's own 1970 text, the Diabolicon, he expanded on this idea by writing pseudo-Gnostic statements from infernal figures, for instance, Beelzebub, that recast the war in heaven as the principled stand of individualism, Satan and his legions against conformity and stasis, the tyrant deity. This narrative carried forward into the book of Coming Forth by Night, where Set declares that the die was loaded against Satan in such myths, and that now Set will offer a more accurate account of the struggle between divine selfhood and cosmic order. Practically, Aquino's occult practice was rooted in ceremonial magic, though personalized. He believed that through ritual, meditation, and willpower, a practitioner could effect change in both the subjective realm, one's own psyche, and to agree the objective universe. However, unlike some occultists, Aquino did not claim omnipotent mastery over physical reality. Instead, magic was a tool for self-transformation and for influencing subtle forces. He often described two categories of magical working: operative, aimed at concrete results, such as healing or obtaining something, and illustrative, initiatory, rituals done to facilitate one's own spiritual growth or passage into a new understanding. An example of the latter is the Setian Greater Black Magic ritual, which might be a dramatic psychodrama intended to push the magician into a new self-realization or communion with Set. Aquino placed heavy emphasis on the magician's will and ethics. In Temple of Set training, initiates are taught to refine their ethical compass and self-discipline before attempting advanced magic, on the premise that to use magic for impulsive, trivial, or egotistical desires is not Setian. The magical motto, Kepher, become, implies an ongoing process. Ritual and study must lead to personal evolution, not mere thrill or display. Aquino sometimes contrasted black magic versus white magic in technical terms. Black magic, the left-hand path, being the use of will to shape one's own destiny, whereas white magic, right-hand path, meant aligning oneself to an external higher power or natural order. By these definitions, he saw even many conventional religious practices, prayer, mysticism, seeking union with God, as a form of white magic, which the Temple of Set rejects in favor of the black magic of individual sovereignty. Aquino's writings frequently reference ancient esoteric traditions as precursors or analogs to Setian practice. For example, he was intrigued by the ancient Egyptian priesthood of Set and by possible evidence of Set veneration in pharaonic text. He noted that images of Set were defaced or banished after Egypt's New Kingdom, paralleling how the concept of Satan was demonized under Christianity. The Temple of Set's very name and much of its terminology, for example, the Council of Nine, Magus, Aeon, reflect a conscious revival of lore from Kabbalistic, Masonic, and Golden Dawn type systems, but stripped away of what Aquino considered their theocratic or right-hand bias. Additionally, Aquino was deeply influenced by Aleister Crowley and Thelema. In the Book of Coming Forth by Night, Set's message explicitly references Crowley's Book of the Law, Liber al Vel Legis, suggesting that it was a genuine divine communication, but that Crowley misunderstood its source. Aquino portrayed Crowley as a flawed prophet of the age of Horus, who had unwittingly tapped into Set's current, but had been felled by his mindless destructiveness and ego. In Aquino's narrative, Crowley's work prepared the way for Anton LaVey, whom Set purportedly deputized for a time, and then for Aquino himself, who was to bring the next phase of occult revelation. This constructed lineage, Crowley, LaVey, Aquino, shows how Aquino situated his philosophical influences. He embraced Crowley's injunction, success is thy proof, and the notion of an occult elite, but sought to avoid what he saw as Crowley's pitfalls of self-indulgence and lack of structure. Where Crowley often worked solitary and chaotic magic, Aquino built an organized initiatory school where LaVey stripped Satanism of metaphysics. Aquino reinfused it with ancient gods and higher mysteries. Aquino's occult explorations also led him to some unusual intersections, such as an interest in Nazi occultism. A controversial aspect of his practices was the 1982 Wewelsburg working. While on a NATO tour in Germany, Aquino privately visited Wewelsburg Castle, the medieval fortress adopted by SS leader Heinrich Himmler as an occult center during World War II, and there performed a magical ritual in the castle's Hall of the Dead crypt. Aquino was fascinated by the idea that the Nazis, albeit a morally repugnant regime, had tapped into powerful esoteric forces, albeit for evil ends. He speculated that the SS's ritual efforts might have unleashed a psychic force that could be redirected for Setian purposes. At Wewelsburg, Aquino attempted to summon the power of darknesses at their most powerful locus, essentially to draw upon any occult energies lingering from the Nazi era. He later explained to temple members that his goal was to transmute that force towards constructive self-evolution rather than destruction. While details of the ritual remain private, Aquino only cryptically mentioned some insights gained. The episode exemplifies Aquino's willingness to engage with dark historical currents in pursuit of esoteric knowledge. It also fed the popular imagination. Critics misconstrued him as a neo-Nazi or dangerous sorcerer, though Aquino explicitly denounced Nazi atrocities even as he studied their occult experiments. In truth, Aquino's take on Nazi occultism was scholarly. He viewed it as a case study in how extraordinary psychic force, misdirected, can lead to catastrophe. A warning that power must be coupled with ethics, a lesson consistent with temple teachings on responsible magic. Finally, it is worth noting Aquino's personal demeanor in occult practice. Those who met him often commented on his calm, professorial tone even when discussing diabolic matters. He did not rant or role-play a fiend. Instead, he spoke as a serious philosopher of religion. In rituals, he favored dramatic symbolism, black robes, candles, swords, and the pentagram of Set, the temple's inverted pentagram emblem, were employed to focus the will. But he rejected any practice of animal sacrifice or criminal acts, arguing that such behavior was undignified and not essential to our work. Instead, Aquino's idea of a powerful ritual might invoke reciting an original invocation to Set, meditating in an ancient temple ruin, or conducting an ordination ceremony for a new priest under a starlit sky. He often emphasized solitary work, that the left-hand path may finally entail solitary work because each individual's relationship with the Prince of Darkness is unique and ultimately non-transferable. This introspective aspect became more pronounced in his later years. He observed that successful Setians often became so self-empowered they no longer need the organization, a paradox he noted as a challenge for any satanic order's longevity. Thus, Aquino's occult philosophy is tinged with a kind of existential acceptance that the truest accomplishment of Kepher might be to transcend the need of any external structure, even the temple he built. In sum, Aquino's occult beliefs were a rich tapestry, part ancient mythology, part modern philosophy, part personal revelation. He lived out a modern incarnation of the mage or adept, striving to unite knowledge and power with conscience. His influence is evident in how later satanic and left-hand path groups adopted more intellectual, self-directed paradigms, following traits that Aquino blazed with the Temple of Set. All right, and then there was the intersection of military and occult roles. One of the most intriguing aspects of Michael Aquino's life is how his military career intertwined with and perhaps informed his occult endeavors. At first glance, the role of a U.S. Army psychological operations officer might seem worlds apart from that of a high priest of Set. Yet upon closer examination, there were subtle and not so subtle intersections between Aquino's service to the Army and his service to esoteric philosophy. This dual identity gave Aquino a unique perspective on influence, belief, and the human mind, which he leveraged in both arenas. All right, so psychological operations and magic. As a psyop specialist, Aquino was trained to manipulate symbols, media, and emotions to affect target audiences, essentially to change people's minds. This is strikingly parallel to the goals of ceremonial magic, which seeks to influence reality, starting with the practitioner's own mind through symbols and will. Aquino himself noted this connection in his paper, From Psyops to Mind War. He argued that the ultimate victory is won by shaping the enemy's perception and will to resist. He envisioned using technology, propaganda, and atmospheric tools to project messages directly into the minds of opponents to persuade them that resistance is futile. Such ideas mirror occult notions of projecting one's will onto others or into their environment. In essence, Aquino approached psychological warfare with the mindset of a magician, concerned not just with physical battle, but with the consciousness of those he aimed to influence. Conversely, he approached magic with the rigor of a military analyst, emphasizing strategy, precise objectives, and evaluation of results. Aquino sometimes describes Satanism, Setianism itself in military terms. In the Mind War paper's introduction, which he later appended to Temple of Set readings, he drew an analogy that conventional war fought with weapons is crude compared to mind war fought by altering beliefs. He believed belief was the ultimate weapon, a concept equally at home in an occult context where belief or gnosis empowers spells. This intersection was perhaps most literal in Aquino's persona. He was known to perform occult rituals while on military assignments. For instance, during the Vietnam War, he completed the Diabolicon manuscript amid bombings and gunfire, experiencing what he felt was an otherworldly inspiration guiding his pen. He described feeling the text had a life of its own, as if channeled beyond his conscious control, an almost mystical experience occurring in parallel with his duties as an officer. It is tempting to speculate that the extremity of war opened him up to what he interpreted as supernatural guidance. Then there was discipline and secrecy. Military life also instilled in Aquino a strong sense of discipline and an appreciation for secrecy and hierarchy, which carried into his occult leadership. The Temple of Set structure with ranks, titles, councils represents a fraternal military order in some respects. Aquino's insistence on vetting members, maintaining secrecy about certain temple writings like the jeweled tablets of Set, available only to higher initiates, and requiring loyalty oaths can be seen as adaptations of military security clearance culture to a magical order. He often analogized the temple's work to a war for the human soul, not a war of violence, but of ideas and wills, not as just as an army unit must maintain high standards of cohesion. Aquino enforced standards in the temple, expelling members who violated ethics or proved unstable. He was essentially commanding two armies, one of soldiers and then one of occultists. In terms of his influence of esotericism on military thought, while it is harder to document how Aquino's occult beliefs directly influenced his military actions, given that overt Satanism would have been unacceptable in official duties, there are intriguing hints. Some who served with him noted that Aquino had an uncanny ability to psychologically assess situations and individuals, a possibly coincidental skill or perhaps sharpened by his magical training in reading symbolism and hidden motives. In the 1980s, Aquino worked at the Presidio in an Army Reserve capacity that involved intelligence analysis. It was in that period that he undertook the Wewelsburg Castle ritual in 1982 during an authorized tour in Europe. One might surmise that he arranged military travel to align with occult opportunities. Indeed, Aquino leveraged his official trips to visit ancient sacred sites and museums where Setian artifacts were held. For example, during NATO exercises, he made time to perform ceremonies in European cathedrals or old pagan sites, blending his personal mission with his professional itinerary, quietly so as to not alarm colleagues. Aquino's ability to compartmentalize was exceptional. Fellow officers who had no idea of his satanic pursuits nonetheless respected his competence and noted nothing amiss in his performance. Meanwhile, Temple associates marveled that a high priest of Set could simultaneously be a decorated lieutenant colonel, suggesting he applied occult principles of glamour and misdirection to keep these worlds separate when needed. Nevertheless, the two worlds collided spectacularly in the Presidio affair as discussed. That episode underscores how Aquino's occult notoriety affected his military role. The mere allegation nearly cost him his army career and certainly foreclosed further advancement. The army had to grapple with unprecedented questions. Can an open Satanist hold a high-level security clearance? Aquino did, and was never formally revoked because no wrongdoing was proven. Does membership in a new religious movement disqualify one from service? In the end, the army had no regulations against it. In fact, religious freedom in the military became a topic of debate due to Aquino's case. He arguably paved the way for later acceptance of Wiccan or pagan service members in the 1990s. By standing on First Amendment rights, he challenged the brass to treat Satanism as a protected belief system, not evidence by misconduct by itself, or not evidence of misconduct by itself. Aquino's eventual retirement in 1994, however, did end the formal linkage of his two careers. After that, he focused primarily on writing and temple work as a civilian. Okay, then there's the occult interpretations of military concepts. Aquino sometimes gave mystical spins to military concepts in his writing. He viewed the battlefield as not just a physical space, but a psychic arena. In his essay, The Dark Side, How to Defeat the Enemy's Mind, he referenced Sun Tzu's dictum that the supreme victory is winning without fighting, paralleling it with casting enchantments that lead an enemy to surrender their will, much like a glamour in magic. He also used the symbolism of the underworld and war gods to inspire psychological operations. For instance, codenaming a 1980s PSYOP field exercise after the god Hades or Erebus to psychologically prime his own teams that they were going into the underworld of the enemy's mind. These choices of names and metaphors, while subtle, show an overlap of worldview. Aquino saw mythic resonance in warfare and martial qualities in myth. Perhaps the most literal blend of his roles was the Order of the Trapezoid. That just sounds ominous. This originally was an inner circle in the Church of Satan focused on Nazi mysticism and occult warfare. Aquino had been fascinated by it in his Church of Satan days and revived the Order of the Trapezoid within the Temple of Set in the early 1980s. Under Aquino's leadership, this order explored occult aspects of the Third Reich, including symbolism used by the SS and hypothetical Vril energy. Members of the order, several of whom were military or security professionals by day, engaged in ritual workings intendedly to magically purge the negative karma of Nazi occult experiments and reclaim any esoteric truths buried in that chapter of history. Aquino's Vevelberg's working was part of this effort. It is noteworthy that he undertook it while on a military posting in Europe, essentially fusing his personal occult mission with the broader context of the Cold War, West Germany. The broader context of Cold War, West Germany. Indeed, one could poetically say he infiltrated Himmler's castle like a one-man special operation to exercise or harness its dark legacy. Aquino reflected on these intersections in later writings. In an afterword of Extreme Prejudice, which is his 2014 memoir about the Presidio case, he mused that had he not been a Satanist, the allegations might never have arisen. Yet had he not been a military officer, his Satanism might never have gained such public prominence in the first place. The uniform gave him a platform and credibility, as well as making him a conspicuous target. Conversely, his occult passion arguably channeled him into PSYOP rather than a more conventional army branch. That strategic and psychological bent of that field suited someone who believed in the power of the mind and will. It is telling that Aquino qualified in several specialty areas, not only PSYOP, but military intelligence and foreign area operations, roles that deal with intangible factors like information and culture rather than infantry or armor, which deal purely in physical force. This alignment suggests Aquino gravitated to the aspects of the military that resonated with his intellectual and mystical interests. In conclusion, while Aquino largely kept his occult and army duties separate on paper, the two informed each other in nuanced ways. His skill in one area often reflected in the other. The psychological insight from magic aided his military PSYOP tactics, and the discipline and analytical rigor from the army tempered his approach to magic. He stands as perhaps a singular example of a U.S. military officer who was simultaneously a prominent occult adept. This convergence made him both effective and to some dangerous in reality or perception. To supporters, Aquino demonstrated that one could serve one's country while also exploring the furthest reaches of metaphysical thought, embodying the citizen sorcerer. To detractors, he seems to personify fears of nefarious forces infiltrating institutions. Ultimately, Aquino managed to navigate this delicate balance for over 2 decades. The intersection of his military and occult role remains a fascinating study in contrasts. Rational soldier and mystical magus, each aspect tempered by the other. It raises enduring questions about the role of belief in systems of power and the extent to which mind wars, whether waged by PSYOP campaigns or occult rituals, can shape our reality. All right, folks. That is all she wrote. So let's just go through some of the comments. I hope you all can't hear all the ruckus in the background. It's driving me crazy. It's causing me to raise my voice to just overcome it. But Michael Kenny says, more owls, laugh out loud. I think you're a hybrid. Okay. Jalaus writes, I had a dream last night about a violet unicorn. It was fabulous. Ron, good to see you, man. Hey, Bon. Hey, bud, Ron here. Your uncle-in-law, Mark Reddy, created Club 9. Good show. Yeah, I hope to see you soon, brother. I hope to see you soon. Without giving too much, Mark was my favorite part of that part of that side of the family, my friend. So take care of yourself. I really like deeply respected him, and like he was my favorite. So, but we'll talk soon. Uh, yeah, I don't know where Gray Owl is. So Jalal says, I see Gray Owl still working on his bogies and the imaging exploration. Yeah, he definitely is. Let's see. Okay, so Ager 2509. If religion is built by people, they grow old and die. So the religion within a few centuries. Okay, Rick says I won't tell. Go on. Yeah, so Ron Libby was actually in the city at the time. So he says the whole Presidio scare was 100% false, well debunked, ruined people's lives. Yeah, so he was there at the time. So I would kind of take his word for it. Yeah, conniving bones, 100%. It was definitely colored by the Satanic Panic. So Jalay Jalal writes, the left-hand path is service to self and does not cooperate except to prosper. Spiritual Ascension says, I rebuke them all. Jalay Jalal, all that helped to get him out of the military. Yeah. Spiritual Ascension just says they were protected by the rest of the monsters. Yeah, I don't know. I think honestly, like given the facts, I think Aquino was railroaded. Not that I'm defending Satanism or anything like that. I think it was just colored by that. Let's see. Okay, so Tim Beck says altruism is tricky when not knowing the altrui. Do good, hope for the best. Yep, cover your ass. Conniving Bones says so. There's aliens, angels, and demons. At least there aren't vampires or werewolves. That's a bit much. I could take a skinny gray, maybe a lesser demon, but I ain't taking on Dracula. Yeah, and there was I think there was somebody who did the abuse. It wasn't Aquino and his wife, right? And they may not have been aware of it, but it sounds like I don't know. I'd have to like study the case in more detail. Okay. All right. So Conniving Bones writes, I've experienced ghosts and poltergeists as a child and seen a large UFO as a teen, but ain't never seen no proof of vamps or wolfmen. Let's see. So Tim Beck writes, I heard really involved, detailed, and immensely disturbing accusations about Aquino. I don't entirely disbelieve them. Crazy stories. Yeah, they didn't show up in this thing. Most of the stuff that you hear about are like MK Ultra Monarch adjacent stuff, which clearly AI did not pick up. So Logan Clark writes, the face peelers are known affectionately by the locals as sucks, which was oh my god, I'm not touching that one. Okay, Spiritual Ascension says the fact that he was a Satanist leads me to believe he was guilty of everything he was accused of. Yeah, when you listen to his philosophy though, it sounds like more of like a Prometheus type of thing. If you watch the Giorgiani episode that just aired on Jesse's channel, he talks a little bit about that. He kind of puts an entirely different spin on it. Basically, it is a reaction to the control system, right? It's like a rebellion to the control system, and when it's framed that way, right? Given that we were all lied to our entire lives, I can understand why people would gravitate toward it. Let's see. I'm not saying you should, but I understand. Yeah, he definitely came. Aquino definitely came out of central casting for like the Devil's Colonel. Yeah, he does look like an evil Captain Kangaroo. Okay, so Conniving Bones says, I'm not religious. I respect those that are, and even though I am not of religious faith, I'm cautious when it comes to such things. You won't catch me near a Ouija board or playing around with magic. Yeah, I would stay the hell away from Ouija boards. Those things scare me too. Logan Clark. Mama always said life was like a satanic military, man. You never know what you're going to possess. All right. Okay, so spiritual ascension says, I am spiritual. However, Jesus is King of Kings. Rick says, Amen. Jalay Jalal says, yes. Conniving Bones says, I do unto others as I would have them do unto me, but I'm not one to turn the other cheek. You get what you give. That's Old Testament. That's what the Old Testament says. An eye for an eye, right? It's not New Testament, though. Tim Beck says, push when pulled, pull when pushed. I get it. Measured response. Hey, Isaac 9. See, there's another 9. We got Club 9. We got Isaac 9. What is up with all these 9s, man? So Spiritual Ascension writes, the Anunnaki coming out the last few years with all these compromised writers talking them up, making them out like good guys, blah, 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 when in reality are a bunch of demonic fallen ones. Okay, so Conniving Bones says Sean needs to animate the owl in the background image so it blinks and turns his head once in a while. Can I? Yes, I can. I bet you I can do that. Can I do that? Hold on. Let me make sure I don't lose my place. I bet you I could. Maybe. No. No. Let's see. I think there's a way to do it, but there's no quick way for me to do it while I'm running this whole thing. Oops, what did I just do? There we go. All right. Oh boy, we got duels. Okay, spiritual ascension. People claiming Yahweh is the good of the Bible, yet so many verses stating Yahweh had form. Heads up, y'all, the Most High Source Creator is formless. Yep, spiritual ascension. So many lies, so many distortions. The truth is popping at the seams. Let it be spewed upon all. That's the problem. Okay, Ron Libby says, dude sounds like he got it. Even if he liked him some ritual and drama, goals seemed enlightened from AI's take. Now I'm just looking down at both hands and thinking, yeah. I mean, AI made him sound like a good guy, but but if he was involved with MK Ultra and Project Monarch, as other people have alleged, there's a dark side to him too. So Conniving Bones says El Diablo Satanicos, they say in Hispaniola. Yeah, Spiritual Ascension says, well, Allah is Baal. I'm not going to go there, but yeah. So Spiritual Ascension says, still deliberating on the exact identity of Yahweh, but it's one of the Yeah, could be. Given how anybody who refused to submit was basically destroyed. Okay. Okay, let's see. Okay. Oh, Tim Beck says, yep, noticed it. 2012, after reading an MIT book, not promoting it, exposing the typology of different propaganda. Okay, I'll hush. What MIT book? Now I want to know. Conniving Bones writes, spirituality is an inflection on morality. a way to define eternal existence rather than accept a lack thereof. In all reality and dimensions, no one living can tell you what lies beyond, as those that have crossed over never return to tell the tale. Jalal Jalal writes the cuneiform translations have a pantheon starting with Zu and goes through Anu and the Anunnaki known identities Marduk, Baal, and includes Yahweh. So, Jalay, which Anunnaki do you think Yahweh is? Spiritual Sentient asks. Okay, so Jalay Jalal just responds just an iteration, one yields to the next, all the same from a storm desert entity. Hey, Jason, good to see you. Okay. Yeah, I can't. Hearing sour cream donuts makes me want to. I think I threw up a little bit inside when I heard that. Ugh. Okay. Yeah, I can't. I can't imagine that the sour cream donuts thing is making me ill. Okay. What was that? Okay. Yeah, you could hear me yelling to like compensate. Oh my god. Hey, Foxy Joe, good to see you, man. Oh, really? His main accuser was a priest? That's interesting. Hey, thank you, Rick, for subbing. I appreciate you, brother. Okay. He reads everything we type. Whoops. Now I feel obligated to be more professional and say stuff that matters. I don't read everything, all right, but I read most of it because if you take the time to say something, I'll and also subscribe. You can't say anything if you don't subscribe. So if you've kind of done that, then you deserve to be heard. And I don't read everything, but so that's I got through it much faster this week, so we still time. Let me just ask the chat: do people know who Kurt Metzger is? Because I can share that. I mean, I did not see his announcement, but I can't talk about anything medical because YouTube will take this off. That's how you know everything in that whole field is all like you can't trust authorities at all in that area because it's censored. Whenever they censor everything, it just means that you should not believe anything that they say. No, he's. I want to see if anybody knows who he is. Let's see. All right, let me just see if I can find this dang thing. Okay, profile. Okay. All right. Let's make this full screen. Oh, for Christ's sake. All right, let me just share it real quick. Now the question is, hold on. I got to make sure that you're able to hear it. I don't know if that does that. Let's see. Okay, also share tab audio. All right. I'm glad I checked. All right, can you all see that? Yeah, it's the comedian. Let me see if let me just make sure I get everything. Yes, that's him in the upper left-hand corner. That's his show. Let's see. Okay, so let me just run this. This kind of blew me away. Okay, here we go.
Oh, and by the way, the guy interviewing him, Through a Glass Darkly is the channel you can find it on. And because I'm sitting there, I'm like, wait, what happened to them people? And then he asks him finally. Oh, and by the way, the guy interviewing him, Through a Glass.
Okay, that just surreal. Yeah. I don't think. Yeah. So just so you know, like that guy has been on. Let me just stop sharing really quick. He's been on Rogan like 6 to 8 times. He's like good friends with him, and he's been mentioned on Rogan when he's not even there by Rogan. So that was surreal. That was surreal to find out that was a real thing. Yeah, it's wild. Yeah, he did. He's a comedian. He's a funny guy. Yeah, yep. He's into all this stuff. He's actually pretty smart guy, but also at the same time hilarious. So he was recounting that Lynn Buchanan episode. I mean, he literally just goes through and describes the interview, right? But that's the only time he explicitly mentions the channel, but I'm still thankful that he did. And the only reason I found out about it, notice also that he was interviewing Nathaniel Gillis. So yeah, it's finally starting to accelerate. So if I normally get 30 to 50,000 views a month, yeah, he definitely wrote for many comedy shows, including I didn't know he wrote for Ali G. And he's on the Jimmy Dore show. Yeah, he's a funny dude. So I'll take it. I will take it. But I just found out about it because people started coming to my channel and just saying like Kurt Metzger brought me here. I'm like, what? Really? And then I found it, and then I noticed, and then it was also he was interviewing Nathaniel Gillis, who I talk to routinely. So anyway, yeah, that's kind of yeah. I don't even know what I would. That's true. We don't hear much from Jesse Ventura at all. Heard from him though when Hulk Hogan died, because I think he was not a fan of Hulk Hogan. I don't know if they interviewed him when it happened or if they just like posted an old interview. where Ventura just kind of said he was not a fan for whatever reason. I don't get into the intricacies of that. So let's see what else do folks have to say. Oh, that's good. That's good. That's good company to be in, Conniving Bones. So Conniving Bones writes, well, your channel is popping up on people's streams like mine. I'm subscribed to you now, Jesse Michaels, Area 52, UAP Gerb. That's good company to be around. Ventura hates him because Hulk ratted him out to McMahon when he was trying to create a union. Interesting. Yeah. Again, I'm not going to say that word. So Tim Beck says soft humorous disclosure, but Cripey reminds me of me tripping and talking about conspiracy 35 years ago. I appreciate that, Spiritual Ascension, and I appreciate all of you, like seeing you week after week. You all have kept me going because it's on January 22nd. It will be 4 years that I've been slogging through this, and I look at like some of my older episodes. Man, I didn't know how to do lighting. I didn't like. I mean, it was. I look at my like my first Lynn Buchanan episodes, and it's like, oh my god, I did not know that you put the light right up there so that it faces you directly, and not on the side, and then all the green screens all patched and messed up. Conniving Bones writes, have you been to the Monroe Institute? I want to go do the Gateway program. I have not, but I definitely want to do that. The problem is that, like, while I have this daytime job or this full-time daytime job, I'll never be able to go. But if that ever frees up, for whatever reason, or if this channel takes off and I'm able to start being able to kind of pay for, make a living doing it, then yeah, absolutely. Because I could use this channel as a vehicle to do that, right? So, but yeah, I've never been to the Monroe Institute, but hope to someday. But again, that's like 500,000 subscribers type size, right? So Fred writes, I think you're perfect to interview the JP whistleblower from Michael Sala because he claims he's active military. You'd be able to tell if he's legit. Maybe. Depends. If he says he's Army, yeah, I could probably suss him out pretty quickly. But again, if the guy's full of crap, I'd hate to put the guy on the spot. Yeah, it's not cheap. I think it's like $2,500. I interviewed somebody who went there. Yeah, Spiritual Ascension, he ain't legit. Yeah, that's what I think I heard like 2,500, something like that. Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I could afford it. My issue is not the money. My issue is the time. Right? I can't. While I have a full-time day job, I just can't get away for anything for a week. Right? I have to. They have to be able to contact me at any time. So, huh. Yeah, I don't believe any of that secret space program stuff. I think it's all bullshit. But I could be wrong. I'm not going to rule out anything 100%, but it just does not seem like it's a real thing. So what else? I'm going to the issue now is what? Actually, I could do it that way. What are my thoughts on ADA? Say more. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what you're talking about. I'm just being. Oh, David Adair. I don't have any thoughts on David Adair. Tell me more. Is he one of those secret space people, secret space program things? I did not see the Mr. Universe contest in 2025. For the record, I did not see it. I did not want to see it, and but I hope you enjoyed it. Oh yeah, he's just anybody that says secret space program and it's like they're talking about like ships navigating like interstellar space, I don't believe it. Yeah, yeah, it's when you have the guy who made it all up sue people because they violated his copyright, that's how you know it's bullshit. That's the whatever Cody or whatever his name is, right? If it's real, he doesn't own a copyright over it. Oh boy. Okay, so how am I going to do this? Let's see. Oh, I know how we can. Just give me a second. Okay. All right. This is a little, not a little. This is 100% promotional. Okay, what I'm about to do. So just bear with me. I'll go through it quickly. But yeah, Corey Good. Yeah, he was suing people because they were saying, "Oh yeah, I'm part of the secret space program too, and I went to this planet and that planet." And he's just like, "That's my IP. Back off." So, oh, interesting. Barry Gamble says so. Vallely is still around. He says often on John B. Main's Midnight to Caravan podcast. What's that podcast about? I'm not familiar with it. I'm surprised he's still around. Okay. All right. This is kind of like a commercial, but I got to let people know about this because if I want to do this for a living, I have to find alternative ways to make money, to make the monies. All right. So you all know that I write, uh, in my free time. So oh, sorry. So it's really cool to be able to converse with the host. Thanks, Sean. When you get all big and stuff, we won't be able to spend as much personal time with you. I'm grateful for being here for this. Well, thank you, Conniving Bones. Yeah, I've been doing this for 4 years, so it's not happening anytime. Probably not going to happen anytime soon. Yeah. So anyway, all right. Here's the commercial. All right. So I have, as you know, I've written many short stories. So what I've done is I've put them into two more anthologies. All right. So if you notice, these are Eyes, the Necromancer and Other Stories. Pretty dark stuff, but it's fictional accounts. Let's be clear, or short stories that I've written in the past and have just consolidated them into. I have three collections now. The old one, you all, Alien Abattoir and Other Stories. You can see that in the link below, all that good stuff. But this one is going to come out. It's not just going to be Kindle, but it's going to come out in a hardback and a paperback on Halloween. Okay, as is the other one, which I am about to show you. All right, just bear with me. I like the cover for the second one a lot better, but okay. All right. So the other one is Hellhold and Other Stories. Again, it's fiction that actually embodies what the theme of the channel is, which is where the paranormal meets, uh, military, science fiction, fantasy, whatever. So it's just they're all short stories. It's a collection of short stories, my third collection. Again, this is also going to come out on Halloween of this year. On both, you can pre-order on Kindle today. So anyway, I'd really appreciate it if you did. All right, I promised that would be it. Happy to answer questions on it, but end of advertisement. But again, it just allows me to work my way to making a living. Oh, wow. Hey, man, thank you so much. Thank you, Conniving Bones. I really appreciate that. But you could have gotten something other than me talking and telling you how great you are. You could have actually gotten a Kindle version of that book for less, but I still appreciate you. Thank you so much. Let me see. Hold on. I'm reading backwards, so I'm just okay. No, but it's close. It's kind of close. Although he's got hair, so yeah. Thank you, Tim. Tim writes awesome, Sean. Thank you, Scott. I appreciate that. Looks like it's a fun read. Meanwhile, Spiritual Ascension is focused on checking out Mr. Universe. Okay. Oh boy. Okay, Indie Spect says, does it seem to you that a few UFO podcast hosts, reporters have recently been acting somewhat crazy the last few weeks or questionable? Yes. Yes. For sure. I'm not going to say who those people are because I like some of them, but yeah, they are acting. They are acting like they're funded by somebody else. Yeah. But they're good people, which is why I'm not going to throw out any names. But I totally agree with that. Let's see. Yeah. There's just some weird, there's weird stuff going on. We haven't even talked about the drones over Denmark and France. So the official story is that, how can you not know where they're coming from? If they were Russian, we would know. So, oh yeah, Scott Ian saying they're losing their minds over 3-1 Atlas too. So yeah, sorry, not 3-1, 3I Atlas. I was corrected earlier, and they were right to correct me. Yeah, there's a lot of deep state. There's a lot of intel stuff going on right now. Maybe. Oh, that's actually Spiritual Ascension. If I just read somebody saying that, I kind of laugh. But given prior statements you've made, that's actually a much deeper comment. So I appreciate that. That's a good way to decipher that sort of thing, right? So Spiritual Ascension for folks on the radio says, so the ones you see who are losing it are literal NPCs. So Tim Beck says, a lot of spectacle in the simulacrum. Unfortunate but expected. Shenanigans abound. Indeed. Yeah, and then there's that weird thing. What about the generals being summoned to a special briefing? It could be related to 3-1 Atlas. It could be related, 3I Atlas. It could be related to tensions continuing to rise in the Russia-Ukraine conflict. It could be related to all the drones that are going on. It could also just be, a big dick contest where Hegseth says, I'm the secretary. I'm the sow. I'm the sow, like the big fat female pig, the secretary of war. You gotta, it's my way or the highway. It could be one of those. Although it would be tremendously wasteful to recall 800 of your, generals and admirals to deliver that message. So Michael Kenny saying the orbs were spotted hovering for hours in Europe. Perfectly normal drone behavior. Yeah, exactly. So Spiritual Ascension is saying, I mentioned above, Sean, the creators are burning the mimics, NPCs, and the lie spreaders. Yeah, we'll see. Spiritual Ascension, we are reigning in a new age. All the BS gotta go. Yeah. Also, did you see that? I'm not going to. This is going to be slightly political, so I'll just get it over with quickly. Did you see that the FBI had 275 agents, undercover agents, at January 6th? Which, if that's the case, that means there's probably 5 times as many contractors and confidential informants, right? So, but again, it wasn't in the mainstream. It was just kind of like Yahoo News, or this is slipping out. No. It's not 300, 800. 800 1-star to 4 stars. Let's see. So Michael Kenny's writing, it's wild that there seems to be so little awareness of UFO history in Europe, even recent history, haven't they? But yeah, and that I would also say that the US or Great Britain probably moved nukes to Denmark, which is why they appeared. These craft or whatever they are. Indie Spec is saying, I haven't looked into it too much, but I don't think Russia makes sense as being behind the drones over Denmark. I agree, but I think that's the cover story. Did it? Yeah. But the mainstream media is like shutting it down. They don't want that story to get out, to know that we have a federal Gestapo. But yeah, although I don't like what the Trump administration is like. I'm a free speech absolutist, and I like making it a crime to burn the flag. Like, look, I think you're a dirtbag if you burn the flag, but I will defend your right to burn it to the death. I think that executive order is weird and unconstitutional. The Council of 9. Why are we saying the Council of 9? What was the Council of 9? Not drones, not Russia. Yeah, they're not. Yeah, they're craft or they're whatever. That was supposed to be a conspiracy theory. Okay, so Barry, why are you talking about the Council of 9? And Fred, what was supposed to be a conspiracy theory? I'm getting confused. I'm so confused right now. But I appreciate. I just want to know so I can respond to it. The embedded agents of January 6th was part of the Comey deal. In other words, if they released it, then Comey would get off? Because I know they were talking about prosecuting Comey. But, I mean, just to think that they wasted our resources to provoke a crowd so that they could arrest a bunch of people for protest. Like, it's just dark. It's just dark. And then my illustrious governor is making life easier for the Sinaloa cartel to go after the families of ICE agents by forcing them to unmask. Thanks, Governor. Really helpful. Really fucking helpful. Freaking psychopath. Anyway. Yeah, I'm trying not to go too hard. I just... Yeah, so we were just talking about that. So Gandalf is writing... I get it. I get it now. Gandalf. All right. Hey, Sean, I'm just joining here late. What do you think is going on in Europe regarding the Jones? At this point, so no, not even mainstream talking about embedded agents and Comey in the same breath. Yeah, definitely not. So Fred is saying that the FBI had assets in the Capitol was called a conspiracy. Yeah. Of course. But we all knew because when they were asked under oath, they refused to answer, like when agents were asked. But I want to answer Gandalf's question. So I don't think they're Russian, but I don't want to entirely rule it out. But it's actually worse news if it's Russian. It means that we're so like NATO is so incompetent that we can't even track simple like styrofoam drones from a country that can't even, has been fighting its neighbor for 3 years and can't decisively win. Right. I would also say that based on historical trends, we probably moved nukes to Denmark, which is why these craft showed, or these objects, let's call them, showed up. So I don't think they're Russia. I don't think they're China. I don't think they're US. I think there's something else. What that something else is, I have no idea. Let's see. Yeah, I don't want to. The problem with Florida is the hurricanes. I mean, I know California's got earthquakes, but I'd rather kind of the ground shake than to like lose everything to flooding. But that's, Club 9 was the best club ever in SF created by Mark Rennie. Rest in peace. Again, there's the 9, right? Right, Ron? I hope you're doing okay, man. Feel free to give me a call if you ever want to talk. So, I'm definitely gonna miss the man for sure. Yeah. Spiritual Century Rights conspiracy theorists are in actual fact prophetic masterminds. Yep. Tim Beck says, we know they lie. They know we know they lie. Yeah. Let's see. Yep. Yeah, nuke's definitely the reason they're there. 100%. Okay, so Fred's saying now that Russia got owned by FPV drones, don't you think Russia's stacking up on millions of those from China? Yeah, probably. Okay. So Michael Kenny said, I wish there were some actual investigative journalists actually putting together the nuke movement war correlation thing. There's something there. Oh, I mean, even in the UK, when they started at those places, we had moved nukes. They were, what are they called? W61 like nuclear gravity bombs. I don't know if it's W61. It's something 61 nuclear gravity bombs. Oops, what was that? Logan Clark, do you think Bledsoe is getting deceived by the phenomena? I don't know, but we will know for sure in March of next year. So we have about 6 months. In 6 months, we'll know. Because he said March. On my show, he said September. So what's likely to happen is if it doesn't show up in March, it'll happen in September. So we have 2 windows, basically. Oh, boy. 1 mile from Eglin Air Force Base. Yeah. Did you know that on UFO Reddit, the most common location of the members on Reddit is Eglin Air Force Base? And one time they accidentally published it. Reddit was just like, here's the place where, each of their subreddits, this is where most of their people are from. And it was Eglin Air Force Base for UFO, which is basically where they have a like a disinformation unit, or like I don't know if it's psyops or it's like information operations. That's what they call it. So Jalay Jalal's writing, I want to know if Bledsoe was in a medical imaging university study as purported by Tim Tactical, who said the study concluded that mankind is infected with a thought form parasite. Yeah, Tim Tactical guy, he just looks, screams sketch to me. But I don't know. Oh, yeah, this is the ultra-terrestrial hypothesis. Yeah, I think that's basically, I think John Keel was probably right. Yeah, it is. At least certain Reddit threads. The UFO thread for sure. It's a soul scalper notice. What is a soul scalper? I need to know because I just look at the guy and I'm like, my spidey sense tingles like not trust. Like you can't trust this guy. Yeah, I'm just saying because there are drones, we probably move nukes. That's all I'm saying because they tend to be correlated. He is attempting to scalp your soul. Interesting. Yeah, he just looks sketch. I'm sure he's a great guy. I'm sure he's a great, but I don't interact with him because he just seems sketch to me. I've reached out to David M. Jacobs, but he's retired. He's not doing interviews apparently anymore. So, Conniving Bones is saying Dad was Air Force. We moved to the area in 1991. 1997, my dad, mom, sister-in-law, and 15-year-old witnessed a house-sized UFO 100 feet away from us in the night sky. Shot off after 30 seconds. Interesting. Okay. Yeah, he's Tim Tactical's definitely. I didn't even know who he was because I just didn't bother to learn. But every time I see that, it's just like he's got like a molester vibe. I guess is the. Again, I'm not trying to libel anybody. I'm just saying this is the vibe. This is what is going on in my head, not him. Yes, he's got and the weird penciled on eyebrows and mustache. You know, it's just very European, like skeezy European. Yeah, it's like Sylvester the Molester. That's all. That's just the first. That's what comes to my head. So again, he's probably a perfectly nice guy, right? I don't know him, but it's probably not even his name. His real name. So let's see. So Jalay Jalal said yes, but who was going to contact Bledsoe and find out about the university study NASA, DARPA funded, or did it not happen? I don't know. The clone dude. All right, we're getting close to the end, and I did a lot of traveling over the last 2 weeks. I was in Lehi, Utah, which is basically where the Charlie Kirk shooting happened. I was there like a week or two after it happened, and then the next week I was in Pittsburgh. So I'm just trying to like get everything back. And yeah, it's definitely a stage name. Tactical is definitely a stage name. Is he really? Ron Libby saying Tim T. However, he's getting his information. He's spot on, in my humble opinion, like 98% of the time. Interview him. We'll see. He's kind of in my Stephen Greer category, which is like I don't know, sleazy B Martini. Yeah, that's a yeah. Yeah, I had wanted to interview Timothy Alberino until this week. When he threw out that China drone explanation, it was just like, come on, man. Why is China in Europe? Why are they sending like advanced drones into Europe? Right? Like there is no logical reason whatsoever they would do that. Right? None whatsoever. Why would they and if they had that capability to avoid detection and destruction by the US military, don't you think they would wait until we were actually at war to exploit this capability? Right? Like anybody with that who's parroting that thing is connected to US intelligence, either wittingly or unwittingly. That's how I know I won't ever interview him because he's not putting out serious information based on this. right? Because I know that's not true. I just know that's not true because it doesn't make any sense. Oh, really? They're Chinese? What model? What's their intent? Why are they just randomly flying it over Denver? Like, it just doesn't pass the sniff test. And for folks who are just joining this channel, because I don't talk about it, but let me tell you what my credentials are. Right, I spent 5 years in the U.S. Army. Was an expert on Soviet doctrine and tactics, also, which extends to Russia. And when I went to graduate school, my thesis advisor was Dr. Ash Carter, who 8 years after I worked for him and he was my thesis advisor, he became Obama's Secretary of Defense. So I know what I'm talking about. Okay. And I'll just leave it at that. There's really no more to say that, but they're not Chinese drones. Okay. So Michael Kenny says putting a date on things usually makes prophets look stupid. Yeah. If nothing happens, either in March of 2026 or, to be charitable, on my show, he said September 2026. Both are equinoxes. So there's the spring equinox in March, and then there's the autumnal equinox, which we just passed about a week ago in September. So he's got two shots. But it could also be that he is getting this information and he's dealing with a trickster. So we'll see. I know all about Guar. I know all about Guar. Yeah. I got a story about that sometime, but I've never been to a Guar concert or anything like that. But yeah, uh, yeah, that's weird. No, I didn't, Logan Clark. So Logan is. Did you talk about George Knapp's cohort from Investigation Alien who died under? Yeah, there's a guy who was former CIA. Also, if you look at his obit, he was a member of the Knights of Malta, which is very interesting because that's like a super secretive organization. It's basically a country unto itself. They can issue passports and all that, and it's also closely associated with the Vatican. Very strange. Yeah, thank you, Gandalf. Yeah, he should stay in his lane. Fred's saying Alberino was just giving lectures about spiritual stuff. No idea he chimed in on geopolitics. Yeah, and he should stay in his lane because whatever the intelligence community is feeding him is bullshit, and he's just spouting it off, probably unwittingly. I'll be charitable there, but he's not critically analyzing what the information he's getting. Yeah, he's definitely a type A stage character. I do not speak Russian. Ich spreche Deutsch, aber ich spreche Deutsch, but that's about it. Well, we'll see. I don't think it's ever taking place. I think we're all on our own and we have to figure it out for ourselves. Spiritual Ascension writes, for many years, I was adamant disclosure would take place in 2026. I hope you're right, but I don't think it's going to happen. Yeah, who knows? Who knows? Okay, so Michael Kenny saying regarding 2027, NHI on the way. If NHI have FTL travel on the way, makes no sense. If they don't have NHL on the way, makes no sense. Yeah. Yeah, Knights of Columbus is a Catholic fraternity. It's the Knights of Malta but it's also a Catholic, by the way. It's also a Catholic organization. Conniving Bones saying, you think the U.S. is worried another country might be just no, because if they were, they would have disclosed. How did the ancients build these megalithic structures? Drones are Chinese. Yeah. Okay. All right. I really do have to go. So everyone, good night. God bless, and have a wonderful rest of your weekend and a fantastic week. And I will see you next week on a topic I haven't selected yet. So thank you very much, and see you all soon.